Hey there guys, this is Cole. Welcome back to another movie review. As you can tell by the title of today's video, we are reviewing the first movie in a popular movie franchise, especially the first movie, and that of course is the 1993 movie Jurassic Park, which I own in this 5-movie collection, which this 5-movie collection comes with Jurassic Park, The Lost World Jurassic Park, Jurassic Park 3, Jurassic World, and then Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I do not own Jurassic World Dominion because, long story short, I am not a fan of that movie. I think Jurassic World Dominion sucks. That's the worst movie in the franchise, but I'll eventually cover that bridge when I get to it. But for now, I'm just reviewing the first movie as of today, which I do like this movie. This is one of the all-time great movies. I mean, I'm sure many people would agree with that. But for those who don't know, what is the official plot to the 1993 movie Jurassic Park? The plot of the movie is as follows. In Steven Spielberg's massive blockbuster, paleontologist Dr. Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill, and Ellie Sattler, played by Laura Dern, and mathematician Ian Malcolm, played by Jeff Goldblum, are among a select group to tour an island theme park populated by dinosaurs created from prehistoric DNA. While the park's mastermind billionaire John Hammond, played by Richard Attenborough, assures everyone that the facility is safe, they find out otherwise when various ferocious predators break free and go on the hunt. So that's basically the simple plot to this movie, and I mean, it's Jurassic Park. I mean, everyone knows this movie, you know. Even if you have not seen this movie, you have heard of this movie. Like, that's how well known of a movie Jurassic Park is. Even people who haven't seen these movies know what they are. Anyways, how was Jurassic Park received when it came out in theaters on June 13th, 1993? Jurassic Park was a well-received movie by both critics and audiences and was a smash box office hit, making $900 million worldwide. And it was so popular that this movie spawned 6 sequels, including the most recent one, Jurassic World Rebirth, with talks of there being another one. And to this day, the first Jurassic Park movie from 1993 is highly regarded as one of the best. Jurassic Park is highly regarded as one of the best movies ever made by both critics and audiences. I mean, pretty much everyone universally loves this movie, myself included, and I'm going to get into the reasons why throughout the course of the review. And I would say this is this is my favorite movie. Now, as a kid, I would have said my favorite movie is The Incredibles. And do not get me wrong, The Incredibles is an amazing movie. Do not get me wrong, The Incredibles is a great movie. But I think as an adult, I lean towards this a little more. But again, I still do rather like The Incredibles. Maybe one day down the road, I'll tackle that movie. But right now, we're tackling Jurassic Park. And one thing I gotta say about this movie is this movie's got a really good cast. You got Sam Neill as Dr. Alan Grant. You got Laura Dern as Ellie Sattler. You got Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm. You got Bob Peck as Robert Muldoon. You got Cameron Thor as Dr. Lewis Dodgson. You got Wayne Knight as Dennis Nedry. Richard Attenborough as John Hammond. Joseph Mazzello as Tim Murray. Anina Richards as Lex Murphy, Samuel L. Jackson as Ray Arnold, Martin Farino as Donald Gennaro, and B.D. Wan as Dr. Henry Wu. So the movie's got a really stacked cast. And now, before I get into my review, I'll talk about how I was first introduced to this movie. I was first introduced to this movie when I was about 8 years old, when my dad had this movie on DVD at his house. So when I was about 8 years old, my dad had this movie on DVD, watched it, really liked it, and then at Grandma Kelly's house, or you know, my mom's mom, she also had these movies on DVDs. So, you know, growing up, I watched Jurassic Park, the first 3 movies. I know a lot of people don't like the third one, and they think that it was a big step down. I like the movie for what it is, but it's not perfect and it has its problems. I mean, we'll get to that when we get to it, but I think over time more people have started to appreciate that movie. Especially after how bad Jurassic World Dominion was, which was pretty much universally hated, and I'm not a fan of that movie either, but we'll cover that bridge when we get there. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into my review on my all-time favorite movie, Jurassic Park. The movie starts off on Isla Nublar Island. Before we get into the review, there's some other stuff I forgot to mention. This movie is actually based on a book published in 1990 by a famous book author named Michael Crichton. And before Jurassic Park was made, there were 2 directors previously attached to this project that decided not to do it. Like James Cameron, who directed the first 2 Terminator movies. At one point, he was going to direct this with Kurt Russell, which would have been cool. But then another choice in mind was believe it or not, Tim Burton, who directed movies like Beetlejuice, the Michael Keaton Batman movies, and Edward Scissorhands, he was actually one of the choices to direct this movie. And do not get me wrong, I do like Tim Burton as a director. I do think Tim Burton has made a lot of really good movies, but honestly, I don't know. I just don't really see his style fitting this movie, and I think Spielberg was overall the right choice. But yeah. Anyways, without further ado, let's get back into the review. The movie starts off on Isla Nublar Island, 120 miles west of Costa Rica, where there is a huge cage containing 2 velociraptors in it, and Robert Muldoon, played by Bob Peck, orders the cage be brought down on the ground by a machine, basically. Then, of course, there is the iconic scene at the beginning of the movie where Robert tells the worker to raise the gates, which he does, and it's going great until a velociraptor in the cage charges into the wall full speed, knocking the guard over, and then is dragged away by the velociraptor. And what makes this scene work really well is the tension, because you don't see what the creature fully looks like, and I honestly think that works really well. And this movie is rated PG-13, and you got to keep in mind, for 1993, movie standards were different back then, because, like, for example, the big budget to a movie, like, I mean, yes, nowadays, like, your typical blockbuster movie, like, for example, a Marvel movie can cost, like, $150 million to $200 million, but back then that wasn't so common. Like, the average amount you would spend on a big blockbuster was like $12 million, which is how much this movie costed to make. But getting back into the review, yeah, like I said, there's the iconic scene where one of the workers who raises the gates, you know, he falls on the ground because the velociraptor charges into the cage at full speed. And again, the scene works really well because of the tension, because you don't see what the full creature looks like. And then I like the part where Robert Muldoon says, "What's happening?" you know, yelling out loud. And I like the iconic scene where the velociraptor stares at Robert, and we see the fear in Robert's eyes. We see the fear in the eyes of the character Robert Muldoon. However, the only part of the velociraptor we see is its eye and maybe a little bit of its face, but that's about it. And I think that scene is rather effective. And then you know, once more of the crew's attacked, Robert Muldoon says, "Shoot her, and stuff like that. And then the movie, you know, and then it cuts away from that, and then we cut to the lawyer Donald, played by Martin Ferrio, who's a lawyer, and he arrives at an amber mine. We then see a fossilized mosquito trapped in amber that dates to 65 million years ago, and one paleontologist says, "Grant's like me is a digger." And then the movie cuts to the Badlands near Snakewater, Montana, where we are introduced to our 2 main characters, Dr. Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill, and Ellie Sattler, played by Laura Dern, who are 2 paleontologists. I love the part where Dr. Alan Grant is doing a presentation on a velociraptor skeleton, and then the kid says, "That doesn't look very scary. That looks more like a 6-foot turkey." Like, I always thought that scene was funny. And then Dr. Alan Grant, he takes out a 6-inch fossil velociraptor claw. He shows it to the kid, and then the kid just stares at it like petrified. And then Dr. Alan Grant like scares the kid by telling him about how aggressive velociraptors were. And then he says, "Try to show some respect." And the kid's like, "Okay." Like, I thought that scene was rather funny. But then Dr. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler meet John Hammond, who takes them and Ian Malcolm to Jurassic Park. And then there's the whole scene where Dr. Alan Grant, he's in amazement at what he sees. He basically sees a Brachiosaurus walking, and Ellie Sattler is looking at a map, and she's like, "This is crazy," and stuff like that. But then, Dr. Alan Grant shows her that there's a velociraptor alive, and then, no, not a velociraptor, a brontosaurus, jeez. And then Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Ian Malcolm all see that there's one alive. And then, of course, there's the iconic line where John Hammond says, "Welcome to Jurassic Park," which by far, is, one of the most iconic movie quotes of all time. But by far, one of my favorite characters in this movie is Dennis Nedry, who is played by Wayne Knight, and he was a hilarious character in the movie. Like, I like the scene where early on, he's yelling out loud, because they're basically outside at like an outdoor restaurant, and Dachshund shows up and he's yelling, "Dachshund, we got Dachshund here," which I thought was funny. And then Dr. Lewis Dachshund gives Dennis Nedry a Barbasol can that has a screw on the bottom lid that can basically hold dinosaur tranquilizer darts, which I thought, okay, that was something a little unique and different. And then not long after Grant, Ellie, and Ian see the dinosaurs when they arrive on the island, they walk inside a building that has a restaurant, store, and a dinosaur skeleton. Then the main characters watch a slideshow presentation on how the dinosaurs were brought to life, presented by Mr. DNA, where we learn these dinosaurs were brought back to life by sticking a needle in fossilized amber with a mosquito trapped inside to get its blood, since mosquitoes fed on dinosaurs' blood. And then the scientists used the DNA of a mosquito as well as DNA from frog eggs to bring dinosaurs back to life, which I thought, okay, that was a rather cool concept. That was something unique and different. I mean, you never really saw that type of concept presented in a movie until this came out 32 years ago. Rather interesting concept. And then I like the part when Dr. Henry Wu, played by B. Day Wan, he basically lets Dr. Alan Grant hold a newborn baby velociraptor. And, Grant is basically asking, "Wait, you bred raptors?" And Henry shakes his head, yes. And another part I like about this movie, we do not see it on camera, but when a crane lifts a cow into a velociraptor den, and then the cow is eaten by the velociraptor, is rather effective due to the sound effects, and they don't even show it on camera. But not long after that, John Hammond, Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Ian Malcolm are introduced to the two main kids of the movie, Tim and Lex, and, who Tim is, which Lex just so happens to be the sister of Tim. And what I like about this movie is how Dr. Alan Grant is stuck with these kids, and Dr. Alan Grant hates kids, but throughout the course of the movie, he eventually grows to like the two kids, and I think that that's rather good character development. Not long after that, there are two moving vehicles that the characters are sitting in. One of the vehicles has Tim, Lex, and Donald in it. The other has Alan, Ellie, and Ian in the vehicle. These two moving vehicles are on a tour to see dinosaurs that are trapped in fenced enclosures. He doesn't have a big part in the movie, but it was nice to see Samuel L. Jackson play a scientist named Ray Arnold, because I've always liked Samuel L. Jackson as an actor, and it's not very often you got to see him play a scientist. By far, my favorite quote in this movie is when, and this part always cracks me up. Even as a kid, this cracked me up. I like the part where the computer says, you didn't say the magic word, and then obviously the computer isn't working, and so obviously this obviously irritates Ray. It obviously irritates Ray Arnold, played by Samuel L. Jackson, and then he just flips it. Like, I thought that scene was funny. And I like the part when Ellie and Alan leave the car to take care of a sick Triceratops, and Ian is basically in the car talking to himself, and then eventually he talks into the camera because he knows John Hammond has cameras in the car, and he's asking questions. And then I like the part where John Hammond's there and he says, "I really hate that man," which I thought that was funny too. I really like the scene at nighttime when the lawyer, Donald, is sitting in the car with the two kids, Tim and Lex. And so basically Tim has these night vision goggles, and Donald says, "Where did he get those?" "In the back." And then, and Donald asks, "Are they heavy?" And then Tim says, "Yes." He says, "Well, then they're expensive. Put them back." And then Tim notices that the goat that was basically left out earlier for the T-Rex to eat, the goat is gone. And then, Lex basically asks, "Where's the goat?" And then the decapitated leg of a goat lands on top of the rooftop glass, on the rooftop glass window of the car, which petrifies the kids and the lawyer. And I like the part where where the lawyer, Donald's like, "Oh geez," and then Donald, like, he's so terrified that he runs into a bathroom to hide, and then Dr. Alan Grant says, "Where is he going?" And then Ian says, "When you have to go, you gotta go." Like, I thought that scene was rather funny too. The scene where the T-Rex attacks the car Lex and Tim that both Lex and Tim are in is a rather intense scene that I think is rather well done. And the special effects in this movie, for a movie that came out in 1993, these special effects are groundbreaking. And the special effects in this movie still hold up 32 years later. And the reason the practical effects are really good is because they used practical effects and animatronics, which sadly most movies do not do that anymore. But then Dr. Alan Grant is able to distract the T-Rex, trying, so that way the kids have some time to escape. And Dr. Alan Grant yells, "Hey," to distract the T-Rex, and then but then, Ian Malcolm decides to do the same, and he's holding a red flare, and then Dr. Alan Grant yells, "Ian, freeze!" Then the T-Rex, basically charges towards the bathroom. It destroys the bathroom and eats the lawyer, which, of course, is a well-remembered scene from the movie. And Dr. Alan Grant is able to rescue both of the kids. And the scene where Dennis Nedry is attacked by the Dilophosaurus is a rather well-done scene as well. Now, for those who don't know what the Dilophosaurus was, it was basically this carnivorous dinosaur that, if I remember right, I think it was about 6 feet tall, maybe a little below that, but basically what a velociraptor was. And not only were they carnivores, but they would also spit poison acid at you. So, yeah, not really the type of thing you want to be messing with. I really like, and talking about other stuff I like about the movie, I really like the scene in this movie where Ian Malcolm, Ellie Sattler, and Robert Muldoon are driving a Jeep away because they're being chased by the T-Rex, and then Ian Malcolm says, "Must go faster." And I like the scene where you see the T-Rex's mouth, like, in the rear view mirror, which of course that scene, that very scene right there, the close-up of the T-Rex's mouth, that was actually referenced in the 1995 Disney Pixar movie, Toy Story, which is a rather great movie. I mean, that movie does celebrate its 30th anniversary this year. Who knows? Maybe I'll do a review series of the Toy Story movies at some point. Or at least the first one for its 30th anniversary, if I get time. We'll see. But anyways, getting back to this movie. And then the scene later in the movie where Robert Muldoon and Ellie Sattler are in the woods, and Robert Muldoon says, "We cannot make it to the shed if we run from here because we're being hunted." And then Robert Muldoon tells Ellie Sattler to run as fast as she can to the shed and stuff like that. But then Robert Muldoon is outside with his gun and he's trying to hunt the Velociraptor. And I like the part where one of the Velociraptors sneaks up on Robert and then Robert says, "Clever girl." And then the Velociraptor attacks Robert, which again, you don't, this movie is, they didn't make this movie super dark because this movie is rated PG-13. And now, for those who don't know, like I said, this is based on a book, and I have read the book myself. The book is significantly darker than the movie, and it's like an R-rated type of book. However, a lot of people wanted this movie to appeal to younger audiences, so I understand why they made it PG-13. And honestly, as much as I love the book, honestly, I'm okay with this movie being PG-13 because I think honestly that for a movie that's rated PG-13, this movie does have some rather intense scenes for a movie that's rated PG-13. And I think it works for what they go for, especially because of the direction handled by Steven Spielberg, who is my favorite movie director. Honestly, I should probably review some of his other movies at some point, but let's get back to the review. But then, of course, we have the scene when where Ellie Sattler is trying to get the power back on because basically the whole system lost power, and Dr. Alan Grant, Tim, and Lex are basically climbing a fence, to get to the other side. And however, Dr. Alan Grant and Lex and Tim's sister Lex, they basically get down because basically a siren goes off, letting them know that the fence is about to power on soon. And basically Dr. Alan Grant says Tim has to jump, and he's like, "Are you crazy? I'm not going to jump." He says, "I'll give you to the count of 3. And then Tim counts to 3, but before he can even get to, because he counts from 3 to 1, he can't even get to 1 before Tim gets electrocuted, and, and he passes out, and then Dr. Alan Grant gives him CPR, and then, Tim, obviously, he was just unconscious. He wakes up breathing and stuff like that. And then him and the kids are all fine. But I also really like the scene in this movie where the kids and Dr. Alan Grant, they're basically chased by the Gallimimus, and then eventually they see a T-Rex sneaks up and attacks one of the Gallimimus dinosaurs, and then Dr. Alan Grant says, "Let's go," and Tim is like, "So much blood," and he's like, "Oh, let's go," and then, the kids leave with him. And then I also enjoyed the scene where Tim and Lex, they wake up the next morning. There's like a Brachiosaurus eating leaves out of a tree, and they basically view it as like a cow. But they basically say that Dr. Alan Grant says the dinosaur is kind of like a big cow, and that it's not dangerous like a T-Rex or something like that. And Lex is about to pet it, but the dinosaur sneezes on her, and then Tim's like, "God bless you," which of course is a well-known scene of the movie. But anyways, getting back to the review, I also enjoyed the scene where very close to the end of the movie, like maybe 15, 20-ish minutes before the movie's over, I like the scene when Tim and Lex are eating food at the dinner table, but they see the shadow of a velociraptor, and they basically hide behind a metal table in a room with a closed door. I mean, that kitchen scene alone is definitely one of the best scenes in movie history. Very tension-filled, and what makes this movie really work is that the characters are great, and you care whether they survive or not. And to me, that's the most important aspect of a movie. You have to have good characters and a good story to carry your movie, and this movie has it. The scene where Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Tim, and Lex, they basically go to the control room to get the power back online, is a good scene where Dr. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, they're trying to keep the door shut so the Velociraptor can't get back in, but Ellie Sattler's trying to grab the gun with her leg, but she cannot grab the gun unless she moves, but they can't move because the Velociraptor's at the door, and then Tim and Lex basically have to get the computer to get the power back. And, Lex is able to do that successfully, but then eventually, the door closes, stopping the Velociraptor, but then Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and the kids escape, and they're climbing through the ceiling vents as a Velociraptor pops up, scaring Lex, but then Dr. Alan Grant kicks it in the face, making the Velociraptor fall, and he rescues Lex. Then, of course, there's the epic finale of the movie where the two velociraptors are about to attack Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Lex, and Tim. But the T-Rex comes in and attacks the raptor that was about to jump and attack Dr. Alan Grant. But then everyone escapes, and then there's the whole part where Dr. Alan Grant runs up to John Hammond, who's in the Jeep, and he says, "After careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park." And then John Hammond says, "So do I." And then of course, there's the whole ending where the T-Rex is roaring inside the building after it defeats the last Velociraptor. And then the movie ends on a good note where Dr. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Ian Malcolm, Tim and Lex, and John are flying home in a helicopter with great music by John Williams. So yeah, that was my review on my all-time favorite movie, Jurassic Park. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I mean, come on. I'm obviously going to give this movie a 10 out of 10. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching my review, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Bye-bye.